My teacher Junpo once looked directly at us and said a line that, to be honest, I've never been able to put down. He said, "I've never known an angry person who did not care." And just sit with that for a second. So you think about it, every angry person you ever met, every time you've lost your own temper, underneath it there has been something you cared deeply about. So here is the question that can take the wind out of almost any row that I use, if I remember. Next time someone is angry at you, instead of defending yourself, instead of putting your guard up, try this. Say to them, "I can see you care. Tell me why. Tell me why it matters so much to you." And watch what happens. The anger has nowhere to go, because you have walked around the bodyguard. You have spoken directly to the thing it was guarding. Hello, I'm Stephen Webb, and this is Stillness in the Storms, the podcast that helps you find some of that firm ground in difficult times. No fluff, no quick fixes, just honest, down-to-earth wisdom from someone who living it every single day, same as you. But just before we get into it, let me say a proper thank you to the people who keep this podcast completely advert-free. This time it's Alice, Kim up in Yukon, Maya, Ken, Linda, Michael, along with a few kind people that chose to stay nameless. Thank you. And including one wonderfully generous gift I can only thank quietly, I got to be honest. And to the regulars who keep this going month after month, people like Laura and Stuart, and so many more of you, thank you so much. You are the reason it stays free. And finally, a warm welcome to a few who started supporting this monthly. Sue, Jade, Jenna and Mia and Rita. You guys are awesome. Lovely to have you with us all. So there are others. You are awesome. If you would like to join them, or you've got something on your mind or an idea for meditation, just head over to stephenwebb.uk. It's in the show notes and I always do answer. So let's get on with the podcast. It's so hot over in the UK and Europe at the moment, but we're here, we're showing up. As you know, I love analogies, and it just puts something in my brain that just makes more sense to me. If it's a wall of text or diagram, I find it really hard to understand. But when someone puts up an analogy, I'm like, oh, I get it now. Now it makes sense. So a good analogy I've always used for anger is a hammer. You know, the hammer is anger. And used correctly in your toolbox, it's an incredible tool. Used incorrectly, used to do damage, used to smash things down when they're not supposed to be done, then it's a terrible tool. You're using it in the wrong way. Above all, it's not the tool's fault, but you need a tool in your toolbox. And I think becoming that calmer person that you no longer have that anger in your toolbox, you're not whole. Your toolbox is not whole. All your emotions are not complete in a way that makes us brilliant humans. To throw away the hammer and go, I'm never going to get angry again. I'm never going to get frightened again. I'm never going to get anxious again. You're throwing away incredibly evolved emotions that have done incredible things in the past. Without people being angry, we would never have a better voting system. Without people being angry, nothing would ever change. Without people being angry, we would never develop democracy. Without people being angry, we'll never improve on the democracy that seems to be going a bit sideways at the moment. But you should be angry at starving children. You should be angry at abuses and all that hurt humans or animals or the planet. There's nothing wrong with a hammer. It's what you do with it. So you learn to pick it up and use it when it's there in the right way. It's a brilliant tool. The problem with anger is that as children, when children get angry, the terrible twos, where they're angry about frustration, like, okay, they're not angry about world issues or democracy. They're angry because you turned up a red t-shirt and they wanted a green one, and you've destroyed their world. Or they're hungry and they wanted, I don't know, an ice cream before going to bed, and all the things in the world says you shouldn't do that. They're angry because you're destroying their world. So it's uncomfortable for us. We don't like to see our children angry. So as a way of guarding that, we try to not let them be angry. We try to prevent that. Come on, calm down. You don't have to be angry. And they learn that anger is a bad thing. And I don't think anybody teaches us that out of knowing that they're not actually helping the situation longer term. It's the best way of dealing with it as they see fit, because anger very often leads to terrible things. We don't very often do these terrible things when we're not angry. We just wouldn't do it. We wouldn't say those horrible words. We wouldn't say those things that we learn to regret, those horrible names. Or I would hope people wouldn't say it out of calmness. There is people that do, but that's a different story, probably a different podcast. But on the anger side, anger is what makes us do so many things at the spur of the moment because we're not used to it. That child doesn't want to kick their mum, but they do it out of anger because they've got this feeling of rage that's overwhelming them. It's a good thing sometimes you need that overwhelming, because if you're going to stand there and try hugging the bear in the forest for 300,000 years, you ain't going to do very well. Oh, just stay calm. Don't worry about it. It's only a bear. That doesn't work. But sometimes most of the time, we're not with that bear in the forest anymore. So that word that we just look up and say, and that moment that we make everything so much worse because we haven't learned to deal with the anger. Anger is just information. Anger is telling us something. Anger comes from a certain place, which leads me on to the bodyguard, because that's what anger is. Anger is the bodyguard that steps in and says, I'm going to sort this. I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen again. I'm going to put the justices right. I'm going to make sure no one parks in my space, or how dare they do that? I'm going to make sure they don't say that again. How dare they betray us? How dare they treat us in that way? All of these things. And there's something softer underneath. Anger is always the second feeling. I cannot imagine. Please enlighten me in the comments or message me where anger is not a second feeling. Because there's always something deeper underneath it. A hurt, a fear, a being unseen, or something like that. Junpo's always taught us that beneath it, there's a fear, a sadness, and a deep caring. You care about something, and if you don't know how to fix the situation, you get angry. Fair enough. I care about kids starving. I get angry about it if I see it on the TV. Sometimes I might want to turn the TV off or turn it over because it's painful, and that anger and I think, what can I do about it? And it builds, and it's horrible, and it's almost paralyzing. But anger can lead to the most intense clarity. And ultimately, no one can make you angry. Yeah. Whenever I say that there's always something in me, that little voice inside of me goes, really? Do you believe that, Stephen? Do you really believe that? Well, I think I do. When I think about it in the cold light of day, I do believe that no one can ever really make you angry. It's a feeling that is chosen after the feeling of deep caring. There's a reaction. The reaction is yours. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes we get so angry so quick, or we tend to stay on the edge of anger for so much of the time that there's almost no time between what happens and when we're angry. If you're always in that fight flight frame of mind, if you're always ready, if you're living in a situation where things can go wrong very, very quickly, then there's very little time between what happens and then the reaction. And I do it with my daughter because I'm emotionally charged when it comes to my daughter and my family and different things. I'm much more likely to snap at them, shout at them. We had a bit of a disagreement about something last night, me and my parents. And we didn't fall out or anything, but I got quite teasy. They got quite teasy and we was like, well, we weren't shouting at each other, but we were frustrated. I was feeling that they weren't respecting me. I wasn't being heard. But I wasn't thinking that at the time. I was just thinking, you're wrong and I'm right. But I care deeply that they hear me and they give me some credit for some of the knowledge I know. But meanwhile, I wasn't doing the same to them. So again, it comes back to that deep caring about something. We care if someone says something. We care if the words hurt. So there is a gap between that spark and that fire. It doesn't have to lead to a full-blown argument. It can lead to, okay, I really care here. What can I do about it? If there is something really practical you can do about it, take a step back, go and do that. But it's very rarely practical to shout and scream. And see, this is where meditation steps in. Meditation gives you a gap between what is arising, what you're feeling, what you're seeing in this moment, what a thought is, the train that arrives. So instead of sitting there on the bench, going back to my analogy that I've used recently, if you're sitting on the bench and you're not thinking about the trains and all that's coming in, the thoughts that are coming in, if a train that you really don't like comes in and it triggers you, you're going to jump to anger straight away. But if you're sitting there, being aware that the train might not be one you like, that person might say something you're not going to like, you can be ready and go, okay, it's not about me. It's more about them. We can be ready and go, do you know what? Well, I'm just not going to get on that train. I'm just not going to rise to this anger. And we're all capable of it. This is what awakened mind does. And you're all capable of it. Because me, you, and everybody you know has been able to respond wisely sometimes, or at least once. So therefore you are capable of wise response, deep heart mind, as Mondo Zen would say, which is Junpo's teaching. Come from deep heart mind. Don't come from the head that's angry or the heart that's angry. There's no space there for wisdom. And there is a question that disarms this for them and yourself. So if someone's really angry and getting in your face, if someone's really trying to make a point and you're not listening, and you're trying to defend your position, you're not. So nobody's listening. If you're both defending, if you're both coming out fighting, no one's listening. There's no point in fighting your side if the other side are not listening or they're fighting their side. There's no brain power for the two things. But what I will say is you can look up and go, I see you care deeply. Tell me why. Tell me why it matters to you. You can say, look, I'll shut up a minute and I know why it matters to me, but I don't know why it matters to you. Please explain. And I think when we do that, it just takes the heat out of the moment. It brings in a bit of wisdom and a bit of heart and a bit of kindness and compassion. You cannot meet anger with anger and expect everything to be okay. Look at the political situation at the moment in the UK in some of Europe and in America at the moment, we're meeting anger with anger. We're meeting name-calling with name-calling. We're meeting ignorance with more ignorance and more ignorance. Instead of going, okay, why do you care deeply about this? What is so important about this? And I tell you what you'll find again and again, because I sit down and have a cup of tea with members of like Reform, which in the UK are very much right of right, and Conservatives and Green members. I'm a Liberal Democrat, so I'm kind of in the middle. And when I sit down with them and we have a cup of tea, if politics comes up, it's very often, it feels like we're miles apart and we both want to defend our position. And when you just say, explain to me why that matters to you or why you think that way, nearly always it'll come back to that caring. It'll come back to that important reason, maybe from their past, maybe they got a fear of the future or something. Maybe that car park space down the road that they park in front of their house and don't like anybody doing that. I think there's loads of places like that. I get loads of emails about people not being able to park in front of their houses. And we've had a problem in this road for many decades. And I do think, why is it important to them? And sometimes it's because they might have a disability. Sometimes it's because they're fearful of something and they need that escape route. Sometimes it's about nothing to do with the car park space at all. It's about trying to show some authority because they haven't been listened to. Who knows? The truth is, everybody cares. And it's getting down to that bottom bit of what they care about. And finally, before I hand off for this week, and Junpo always used to say this, and I think as time goes on, I understand it more and more. Your angst is your liberation. So where we've got that tight knot, where we're angry, where we're reacting instead of responding, that's where our liberation is. If we can deal with the reaction by creating more space between what's arising and what we care deeply about, and our anger reaction, what we do with the hammer, then ultimately we'll have a lot more peace in life. And we're a lot better conversations, a lot deeper conversations. We might actually realize that in politics we're not that far apart. We might actually realize in whether it's race or all the other things, we might dislike a certain type of food, but ultimately we all care about kindness. We all care about love and we all care about each other. And we don't want people to die ultimately. We don't want people to suffer. And I think when we get beyond the anger and put the hammers down when we're using them in that way, that's where things really start to change. So here is what I will leave you with. Your anger is not your enemy. It is a frightened part of you in armor, doing the only job it's ever learnt, keeping something soft from being hurt again. And it does not need banishing. It needs hearing. It needs listening to. It needs understanding. And the moment it is truly heard, it tends to lay down its armor. It tends to stop fighting. So next time the heat rises, I'm not talking about the heat in the UK and Europe at the moment, but next time the heat rises, before you do anything with it, try one quiet question. Not who is it to blame, just what am I really trying to protect? And always remember Junpo's line. You only get angry about what you care deeply about. So somewhere in there is something you love, something you care about. And the same for them. I have recorded a short meditation to go with this one. It's over on Inner Peace Meditations, and it's called Space Before You React. A few minutes of practicing exactly this, finding the gap, meeting the heat, meeting the anger, meeting that cinder or that spark before it runs the show, before it takes over. And sit with it once or twice a day, or just once or twice this week. It would do way more than just talking about it. Understanding it philosophically, that's one thing. Understanding it in your heart and living from it is a different story. So that is what your anger is really saying. I'm Stephen Webb, and thank you and everybody who keeps this going. If you can, please follow the show and leave a review, especially on Apple or Spotify. That really does make a huge difference. I do always get to read them. Might take me a little time, but I do always get to read them. And thank you so much, and take care. Just be kind to yourself. Be kind to your anger. Don't throw it out. And I love you.